It used to feel like you cracked the system. Hotels were for tourists. You were a traveler. You opened Airbnb, found a cute apartment for half the price of a Marriott, messaged a real human, and suddenly you had a kitchen, a neighborhood, and a story. Now you open the same app and see a $140 a night cozy studio, plus a $120 cleaning fee, a $60 service fee, a list of chores that would make your mom proud, and a checkout time that's somehow earlier than your alarm. Somewhere between Air Mattress and IPO, the platform that promised live like a local turned into a very expensive way to take out someone else's trash. So what happened? How did the company that disrupted hotels end up making a lot of people miss hotels? To understand how broken it feels today, you have to remember how good the original deal was. Airbnb was born in a recession. Hotels felt overpriced, cities were full of unused space, and regular people needed side income. Airbnb connected all three. A spare room became rent money, a couch became grocery money. Guests weren't comparing thread counts, they were chasing experiences. The early promise was simple: cheaper than a hotel, more interesting than a hotel, and more human than a hotel. No resort fees, no points games, no corporate vibe, just I'm in someone's real home. Hosts left handwritten notes and a bottle of wine. Guests left long emotional reviews. It felt like a community with a credit card attached. Financially, it was brilliant. Airbnb didn't own buildings, didn't pay housekeepers, didn't maintain pools. It ran a marketplace and took a cut. The guest paid a nightly rate and a service fee. The host paid a smaller fee on their side. Airbnb sat in the middle, collecting a slice from both with almost no physical overhead. The more nights booked, the more the machine printed. And because hosts were often undercharging compared to hotels, there was obvious room to grow. For a while, everyone won. Hosts made extra income, guests got deals, Airbnb grew like crazy. Then the incentives started to drift. Once investors saw the growth, the expectations went vertical. Airbnb wasn't allowed to stay a cute side hustle platform. It had to become a global machine that delivered quarter after quarter of increasing revenue. When you're a marketplace and you can't endlessly invent new users out of thin air, you have two levers: raise prices or squeeze more out of each booking. This is where the fees, the junk charges, and the chore lists start to creep in. Cleaning fees are the most obvious symbol of that creep. In theory, they're simple. The host charges a one-time fee to cover the cost of cleaning between guests. In practice, they became a second price tag. Hosts began using low nightly rates to show up in search results, then slapping a big cleaning fee on at checkout to make the math work. For a 2-night stay, that fee can double your effective price per night. Guests learned the hard way. The $89 a night place was actually $170 a night once all the line items showed up. Airbnb made it easier to do this because the fee structure worked in its favor too. If the cleaning fee is part of the booking total, Airbnb also takes a cut of it. More fees, bigger total, bigger rake. On top of that, the platform pushed hosts toward professional hosting, outsourcing cleaning, standardizing processes, raising prices to cover those external vendors. It solved some headaches, but it also made Airbnbs feel less like homes and more like unregistered hotels with bigger rulebooks. Then came the chores. Early on, checkout was simple. Leave the keys on the table. As the platform professionalized and margins got tighter, instructions got longer. Take out the trash, strip the beds, start the laundry, run the dishwasher, wipe the counters. Some guests were getting asked to basically reset the unit while still paying a triple-digit cleaning fee. It broke the illusion. You're not a welcome guest when you're paying high prices to do unpaid labor in a stranger's house. All of this is happening while the price gap with hotels shrank. In a lot of cities now, if you compare a small Airbnb with a mid-range hotel, the nightly cost is very close. But the hotel price includes the cleaning, the maintenance, the front desk, and some basic peace of mind. No bizarre house rules, no cameras to worry about, no quiet hours or we keep your deposit surprises. You get fresh towels and you don't have to strip the bed on your way out. That changes the calculation. If the price is the same, people start asking, what exactly is the benefit of staying in someone else's apartment over a normal hotel? Underneath all of this is the float that almost nobody outside finance talks about: Airbnb gift cards and prepaid balances, hosts requiring payment well in advance, guests loading credit into accounts. When you pay early and stay later, Airbnb holds that money in the meantime. Multiply that by millions of bookings and you get billions of dollars in cash sitting temporarily on Airbnb's side of the ledger. It doesn't feel like a bank, but functionally it's doing something banks love: holding onto your money, earning interest on it, and giving you nothing back. The more they can nudge behavior toward upfront payment, the more that float grows. Hosts saw the game too. In the early days, most hosts were regular people renting out their own place. Over time, more hosts became mini corporations, running 10, 20, 50 properties. They treated Airbnb like a yield machine. The goal wasn't nice experience, it was maximum occupancy at the highest sustainable price. That meant dynamic pricing tools that change rates like airline tickets, aggressive cleaning fees, and strict policies. The listing still showed smiling couples and charming loft descriptions, but the business underneath looked more like a spreadsheet than a guest book. Meanwhile, cities started to push back. Neighbors complained about constant turnover, late-night noise, and entire buildings being turned into ghost hotels. Housing advocates pointed to neighborhoods where long-term rentals vanished while Airbnbs multiplied, pushing locals out or driving long-term rents higher. Regulators reacted. New York, Barcelona, Amsterdam, and dozens of other cities passed rules limiting short-term rentals, imposing registration requirements, or banning whole home rentals for under a certain number of nights. That squeezed supply in the most popular high-demand cities, the exact places people dream of using Airbnb. The platform tried to respond with PR campaigns about responsible hosting, party bans, and new safety rules, but there was a deeper trust problem building with regular guests. They were seeing more cameras in listings, more horror stories of hidden recording devices, more gotcha reviews where hosts punished honest guests for small complaints. The review system, which was supposed to keep everyone honest, became a hostage situation. Guests felt pressured to leave 5 stars or risk getting slammed in return. Hosts felt like one bad review could tank their income. It stopped feeling like community feedback and started feeling like a mess people were afraid to touch. At the same time, the macro story shifted. Airbnb is not actually dying in the literal sense. It's profitable and still growing. But what's dying is the original dream that made people love it. When revenue becomes the main character, experience becomes a background extra. Prices go up, fees multiply, policies tighten, everything that made it special gets quietly edited out in service of growth. That's how you wake up in 2025 and realize the world's favorite travel hack has turned into the thing it was supposed to save you from: an expensive, impersonal system that sees you mainly as a line on a quarterly slide. Hotels, for their part, smelled opportunity. They upgraded lobbies to feel local. They started offering apartment-style rooms with kitchenettes. They emphasized daily housekeeping, 24/7 service, and clear all-in pricing. They rolled out no resort fee packages in cities where guests were sick of add-on charges. Loyalty programs improved. Suddenly, the old boring hotel started to look like the stable, transparent option next to the Wild West chaos of short-term rentals. None of this means there aren't great Airbnbs anymore. There absolutely are. There are still hosts who leave homemade cookies, who genuinely care if you had a good trip, who price fairly and keep fees reasonable. But those hosts are now competing against an algorithm that rewards high occupancy and high revenue per listing. They're competing against professionalized operators who know every trick in the book. And they're operating on a platform whose main job now is to impress investors, not delight guests. The irony is brutal. Airbnb could fix a lot of this. It could cap cleaning fees relative to nightly rates. It could discourage laundry lists of chores if a cleaning fee is being charged. It could prioritize listings that offer honest, all-in pricing and reward hosts who keep things simple. It could give more weight to guest complaints about nickel and diming instead of just raw revenue metrics. But every one of those moves would mean leaving some money on the table, at least in the short term. And that's the tension at the heart of every platform that made it. Do you protect what made people love you, or do you squeeze what you can now and hope loyalty somehow survives? Right now, it feels like Airbnb chose the squeeze. The $500 cleaning fee is just the symbol we all latch onto. It represents a bigger shift, from hospitality to extraction, from sharing to shakedown. People don't talk about their magical Paris apartment anymore. They talk about being charged $250 to clean a place they already vacuumed. They don't brag about how cheap it was. They compare screenshots of fee breakdowns and laugh. The vibe has gone from I hacked travel to I got played. So is Airbnb really dying? On a spreadsheet? No. The bookings are still there, the revenue is still there, the expansion into experiences and luxury stays is still there, but an empire doesn't just live or die on numbers. It lives or dies on whether people feel good about using it. Netflix learned that when it raised prices and cracked down on password sharing. Disney learned that when it milked too many sequels. Airbnb is learning it now, one annoyed TikTok at a time. And the end of an empire never looks like a giant explosion. It looks like a slow shift in default behavior. One family books a hotel just this once. A group of friends tries a different rental platform. A city caps the number of Airbnbs allowed, and visitors discover they don't miss them that much. The company can survive that for a while, but if enough people make that quiet choice, the story rewrites itself. Airbnb doesn't collapse overnight, it just stops being the automatic first tap when you plan a trip. In the end, this is a story about greed, but not in an abstract cartoon villain way. It's about what happens when every part of a system is nudged to extract just a little more. A higher fee here, a stricter policy there, one more listing squeezed into a neighborhood. Each change is small. The final result is huge. The promise that made it special gets eaten by the business model that made it rich. And the guests, who were supposed to be at the center of it all, quietly go back to doing the simplest thing: booking whatever makes them feel respected, not squeezed.